To tonight's other breaking headline, authorities on alert following the verdict in the racially charged murder trial of a police officer in Chicago. Officer Jason Van Dyke found guilty, shooting Laquan McDonald 16 times, the teen seen on dash cam walking past the officer's cruiser. Van Dyke had testified in his own defense, claiming he feared for his life. Tonight, what the jurors thought of that defense. Here's ABC's Alex Perez.
With the city on edge, the jury taking less than 10 hours to reach that verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Jason Van Dyke, guilty.
Jason Van Dyke showing little emotion as jurors found him guilty of second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated battery, one for each shot in the 2014 killing of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. The judge revoking the bond for the former police officer turned convicted felon, now booked in jail. And outside, jubilation as the decision was read. McDonald's family saying justice was served.
Laquan McDonald represents all of the victims that suffered what he suffered across the country.
The white officer shooting the black teenager 16 times as he walked down a Chicago street carrying a 3-inch knife. The shooting, captured on police dash cam, sparked months-long protests. When it was released, some violent. Today, more than 12,000 Chicago officers placed on alert, bracing for demonstrations. On the witness stand, Van Dyke, who was responding to a call of someone breaking into cars, testified he believed McDonald was lunging at him and refused commands to drop the knife.
I was yelling at him, drop the knife. I yelled, I don't know how many times.
But in the video, McDonald, who was high on PCP, appears to be walking away from Van Dyke when he is shot. Prosecutors telling the jury the shooting was unjustified.
There's no justification for shooting Laquan McDonald that night. Not one shot. Not the first shot, not the 16th shot.
But defense attorneys arguing the video was, quote, essentially meaningless because it didn't capture the incident from Van Dyke's point of view. But the jury disagreeing, and tonight, some explaining why.
He should have realized what the situation was, and instead of escalating the situation, should have at least looked at other options.
So let's bring in Alex Perez with us live tonight. And Alex, Jason Van Dyke's legal team, I know, is calling the verdict a sad day for law enforcement, but they said something else that caught our attention today. They also called this a relief.
Yeah, that's right, David. The defense calling this a relief because had he been convicted of first-degree murder, he could have faced a life sentence. But still, with his current convictions, he's looking at possibly decades behind bars. His attorneys plan to appeal the decision. David?
All right, Alex Perez with us tonight. Alex, thank you. And now to new...
Shockwaves through the streets of Chicago after police officer Jason Van Dyke was found guilty of second-degree murder in the 2014 shooting of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. Now, I want to give you some context about why this conviction looms large. A Bowling Green State University found that between 2005 and April 2017, so 12 years, 80 on-duty officers were arrested for murder or manslaughter charges. That was a 12-year span. 35% were convicted. 39% were not convicted, 26 were left pending. And yet the issue remains, I can't really give you any good data on this subject because we don't really study it. It's like we're afraid of what might be the reality. I can't tell you how many questionable shootings are there in a year. I can tell you that there was a study that said on-duty officers shoot about 1,000 people a year fatally, but that doesn't mean they're wrongful shootings, God forbid. So what's the breakdown? We don't know because we don't study it. So ultimately, you have to remember what the case and life of Laquan McDonald represents, especially to the African-American community. While there is a process in place to determine whether an officer is guilty or not, we always have to remember there could be more to a story. Now, more, in this case, was a video. And this is why we push for video and body cameras if you want truth to be a commodity. Authorities initially claimed McDonald lunged at officers with a knife, but the footage that you're watching showed McDonald walking away from police. Now, this tape was hard to get into this discussion and in this investigation. There's been a ton of fallout because of that. Protests, a Department of Justice civil rights investigation, condemnation of the city's Democrat mayor, and the ouster of the police superintendent. No matter what side you fall on this case, this tape, this life that was unjustly cut short, should be one more reason why officers should want cameras, to exonerate them, to show them and everyone else the truth of a situation. That is true transparency. Let's bring in Don Lemon. This was a big case. I don't know what it will mean, but it certainly meant something to this family and to people who are watching for a sense of justice.
And it was suspenseful, all of it. It was coming down the same time Susan Collins was about to give her speech, or giving her speech on the Senate floor. But this is a reason, Chris, that folks are out on the streets pushing for criminal justice reform. This is a reason that Colin Kaepernick is kneeling during the national anthem, or did kneel during the national anthem, and other professional athletes followed suit. It's because of situations like this, to bring light to situations like this. Remember, Chicago's a big city. There's lots of crime there every year, lots of police-involved shootings. This is the first one to be convicted. Let's say, I just want to make sure I get this right. The first officer to be charged with first-degree murder since 1980. So, when you think about all the stats and how big the city is and how long ago that is, I'm sure there are some, listen, most officers are good officers, but I'm sure there are some officers in the interim who have made some mistakes, but never been charged before.
Right, but
that's
I'll tell
why
you
people
what,
are taken to the streets.
For all this talk about, you know, blue pride and all that, officers, when you talk to cops, they want transparency.
Yes.
They want people to know that they're doing their job the right way, and they want people who are not doing their job the right way
Not all of them.
to be
Not
exposed.
all of them.
Not all of them, but most of the ones that I deal with, Don, they'll say, I'll wear a camera. I want everything recorded, though. I want everything recorded, not just what starts once I'm in a confrontation. I want to show what started that confrontation, because then the truth will set you free. You'll see exactly what the instigation was, why there was a use of force, and at least we have transparency. Right now, it's too often too hard to make a case either way.
Well, I spoke to some folks today who said, and they were talking about this, and they were also weighing in on what happened today in Washington, and they said, well, this, in a way, gives us hope that there is some change. I don't know what consolation it is to the McDaniel family, but at least now someone is facing justice for what was how the family was wronged by losing their loved one.
And look, it'll never be enough for them, but at least it's something that shows the system respected the loss.
When do you vote your conscience? How tough or how easy should that be? That's the subject that we're tackling tonight on the show.
A good subject. Me?
All right.
Every time.
Every time.
All right, back to the Supreme Showdown.